Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, second week of January 2024. And up here in the Northeast, we finally got a snowstorm. Sunday into Monday, in my town, we got an average of 14 inches. It's hard to tell. It blew around a little bit. It was cold, which made the snow light and fluffy. My only concern is why I don't have a block heater on my diesel tractor, but it never fails to start, thankfully. I'm looking for a piece of wood to knock on. Cardboard's gonna have to do if you're superstitious. And I just had a warning come over. I don't know what you use for music in your shop, but a few years ago, I have an Alexa, and I asked her to play music, and she does anything I want. And when it's quiet time, I tell her to stop. So, and the sound quality out of that little round disc, about the size of that governor cover, is incredible. For one speaker, I don't know how they do it. So, I get a lot of questions about rebuild kits. Where do I get them? What do I use? Will you sell me one? No, I can't sell one. I buy Turbo 400 parts in bulk. So technically I could, but then I just have to buy more, and it's hard enough to keep them in stock as it is. It takes a lot of money to have parts in stock. That's why I don't do very many variables. I prefer the Turbo 400. I've invested heavily in it. I like it. And that's what I stock. Anytime I have to do even a TH350, I have to go buy a rebuild kit for sure, or pieces thereof. And if I have a broken hot pot inside the transmission like the last one, I was inspecting the valve body, taking it apart, and the pressure regulator spring was broken. $5 part, probably why the transmission was failing, you know. But I had to go strip an old valve body to get one because it was the easiest way. Unfortunately, I have a tote full of parts I've saved over the years, TH350. I have them separated so it wasn't hard to find. And I believe this valve body for this transmission behind me, I'm going to have to do the same thing for the accumulator spring. I believe that's broken. Anyway, rebuild kits. Let's just talk TH350 specific, but they're pretty much all the same. If you are bringing a transmission to your buddy and he's going to overhaul it, he says, bring me a rebuild kit, you're going to look online and say, hey, this one's really cheap, let's buy this one. Probably called a Banner kit, B-A-N-N-E-R. That means you get clutches only, probably not made in America like these Altos. You get a paper and rubber kit, gasket set. There's no hard seals, that means you don't get the front and rear seal. You don't get any bushings. You probably don't get any rings, you might. You're not going to get enough parts to rebuild the transmission. You could probably, with the gasket set, take it apart and put it together, but you still, again, you don't have the hard seals. They are a price point introductory to get you to spend more, to fool a lot of people. So if you want to be disappointed when you get all the parts laid out and you maybe have a time frame you want to meet and you don't have enough to overhaul the transmission. And if you look closely at this Banner kit, that's what they call them, I think it's a universal term, you don't get steels. I think I mentioned that. You only get clutches. And you might not even get enough to do a stock TH350. They came with various amount of clutches. I've seen them with as little as 2 intermediate and 3 in the direct and 4 in the forward. That's pretty much the minimum. And you can obviously machine the pistons just like we've done a million times, but if you're just doing a stock rebuild, at least get the next step up. Look at the kit you're buying. You want the hard seals, so you're going to have to go buy them. You want steels, unless you have already taken your transmission apart and your steels are in perfect shape. And the kit you're buying is a not American made. Again, these say right, Alto made in USA. Those are nice OEM quality, if not better steels. If you're getting imported steels, you might be better off cleaning up your old ones if they're in good shape. But chances are 30, 40, 50 years old, they're not. Diving in a little deeper, So that might be a mid-range kit. You might get steels in the seals. I'm not trying to rhyme. But you're not going to get a modulator. You're not going to get a filter. You see what I'm saying? Until you get the master rebuild kit. And then you're going to get the modulator, the filter. You're going to get a band or two, depending on how many the transmission has. You're going to get maybe only the pump bushing and the tail housing bushing, but ultimately you get the whole set of bushings that you're probably going to need on a 50-year-old transmission. And by now, price-wise, you're spending a lot of money. If you shop around for the master kit that should have everything, you've just at least tripled the introductory price that you originally saw, and you thought you were going to get away with a cheap rebuild. But reality, you're wasting your time if you do much less than the master kit, because unless you're freshening up a transmission that you just had apart last year or somebody did, you're going to need everything. Both the kits here, this is pretty much an empty box. I tend to always save any spare parts I have. If I have an extra clutch or an extra seal, I'll make a box specific to that transmission, and over the years just keep adding to it. So when I'm done with this kit, I will do the same thing. I mean, I'm going to use most of it, but there's always a few variants, you know, depending on what type of dipstick and kickdown cable you have in a TH350, whether it takes a top hat or an O-ring. I'm going to save whichever one I don't use. And given the choice, of course, I want American-made stuff. I think the quality's better. The imported stuff is probably okay, but that could be a whole video, many videos by itself, and let's not go down that rabbit hole. iSource, where do you buy it? Next question I always get. For something like this TH350, where I am not going to stock, 25 of these kits or buy 100 packs of clutches. This one I shopped around. I bought it on eBay. It's an Alto, made in USA, and it did not come with the modulator and filter, but it had everything else I need combined with everything I already have. Because I already had a bushing kit, many bushing kits left over from the years, so I knew I was all set there. I had lots of rings. I had Teflon rings if I need them, which this one had Teflon rings. So I knew I was all set. The modulators, I've shopped everywhere, and my local O'Reilly's has been cheaper by a few dollars than anybody else, and I don't really need to stock them because they deliver. I usually buy 3 or 4 at a time. I don't want to have them drive over here for $10, but or $12, whatever it costs. But same with the filter. I'll shop around, but if you never know, if you don't have a loyal store. If I had a store on the corner, I'd just walk up and get it, but I don't, so I have to source it if I have time. Most of the time online, but I always check local too, because you never know price-wise how the structures work and where you're going to save money or time. Because if it's 50 cents more, but I can have it today, that's worth something. So in the last video, we stripped this 1979 TH350. It had never been apart, that I'm sure of. Unfortunately, in 45 years old, that's a lot of heat cycles. Probably the worst set of, like for instance, stuck valve body gaskets I've ever had to scrape. So after I got done plowing yesterday morning, I got my chair and my scraper, sharpened it up. I sharpened it on the belt sander. And you get just the right angle, you can chip away at the gasket without hurting the aluminum. Because the goal obviously is to not hurt the case. And I chipped away at it for a while, finally felt confident I'd be able to get it in the parts washer while I went to eat lunch. Fired up the parts washer and did accomplish that. It went okay, but still just scraping the pump gasket and the valve body gaskets, that's 2 hours. 2 hours you don't plan on, 2 hours you'll never get back. But you don't have a choice. I've tried chemicals in the past. I just get out my scraper and suck it up and do it. And you're left with a giant mess. I get most of that out of there, and the rest of the case cleaned up pretty nice. Give me time yesterday afternoon to paint the case and then start working on the small parts. my strategy is just to keep it interesting in my mind. I'm not sick of the process, but I wish we're just about into the fun part. I wish I would discipline myself to wash every pot and have it all laid out. But that seems inefficient. Some of the stuff has to be cleaned and painted. That's what you see in front of you, plus the case. And to paint the case, I don't have dummy plugs. You probably can't see it in the picture, but that's my Turbo 400 set of dummy plugs. I can dummy up the whole case to paint it, because I find I used to either not paint the transmission when I rebuilt it, or give it an overall spray job afterwards, and that looks awful for the most part, compared to painting all the pieces individually and cleaning or replacing all the bolts with new. In this case, where this is a somewhat historic vehicle, if you will, I'm going to clean all the stock bolts, put them in the tumbler or the wire wheel. When it goes back together, it's going to look almost stock. I did paint it stainless steel, which is as close to raw aluminum as you can get, because the case was not, it was nice, but it was stained and ugly looking. So with the okay from the owner, the shop is working on it anyway, we covered this ahead of time. I said, you know, you want it painted, try to make it look somewhat stock. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Stock with the pan and everything would have been left raw, but I'm not going to do that, so I painted the extra stuff black. Like I started to say, I don't have all the plugs, so I go ahead and install like the 1-2 accumulator and the snap ring on the side of the case just to plug that hole. And go ahead, I bolt the tail housing on, paint it all, and then strip it back apart, prepare it for assembly. And I will wash the internal pieces as I go. Again, I'd love to paint them all and lay them all out, but is another day of doing that. And in the same day, I can wash and assemble the transmission. So it doesn't make sense. It would please me, my, part of me that likes to stare at all these nice clean parts and all I can do is bolt them together. If that's all transmission rebuilding was, if I could just assemble new stuff, boy, that'd be fun. But it's not. It's 3/4 or more of your time is stripping and cleaning the nasty old stuff. But that's life. If you're new to the channel, I started in a transmission shop the day I turned 15. Well, actually the day after. The day of I turned 15, I got on my bicycle midwinter, a day like today actually, and drove around and stopped a few places, and I stopped at the transmission shop, my third or fourth stop, and he said, come back tomorrow. And the rest is history, I guess. It's hard work, especially when you start R&Ring in an old car wash, and you come home with dried, speedy dry up to your knees. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about my work career anymore, but again, I'm 58 now. Started when I was 15, and I knew some stuff about transmissions to start with. There's still no shame in the fact that I'm excited. Just the other day, I bought a bunch of stuff from a friend of mine who's moving to Arizona from Maine. And I was happy to find in the bottom of the tote he brought over I got a Turbo 400 book, one I didn't have, an older version of one I have, I should say. I don't have this Ron Sessions TH350 book. And there's no shame, especially when, I've probably done hundreds of these. I did one last week. It's still, when you're putting it together and you have if you're questioning yourself, there's no shame, and it's a lot less shame to stop, answer your own question, and then continue instead of just bowling ahead and making a mistake, and then everybody's going to know you made a mistake. In this case, you're the only one that knows you had to go back and look at the book, and I'm here to tell you there's no shame in it. I'm not afraid to say I double check and triple check myself, because in an automatic transmission there is no room for error. It will show up immediately. There's no getting away with anything. It's always a good feeling. When I called it quits last night, I came out after supper to paint the black pieces that you saw, to be at this point, because it takes a lot of work to get this far. I have a usable case. I've inspected it. Everything looks fine. It's painted. When it's clean like this, you see things you don't normally see. The partial VIN is on the side of the case over here. this morning I'm on Facebook Marketplace and there's an old ad. The car has been sold, but there was a 79 anniversary Trans Am, and there was a picture of the door tag with the VIN. So I saved the picture just to double check, see if it was the same car. I believe this person has owned the car since new, but it was an easy check because, again, the partial VIN's right on the side, and they didn't match up. So, but it was kind of fun anyway. I geek out on stuff like that, just trying to, go over the history of stuff if I can. It only takes a few minutes, if that. So enjoy your day wherever you are. I hope it's sunny and 70 degrees with a very light wind. But probably, like the rest of us, you're getting some kind of weather. So take it easy. Talk to you in a few days.